Hi, Zizaran here with a preliminary build guide for the self-exploding totems, and this is a very up-and-coming build. A lot of people might have seen this going around, seen several people talking about this is definitely the strongest build this league. I'm scared to call it that because I thought artillery ballista would be that, and then this showed up. People were already noticing this, artillery ballista, and some of the others are things that definitely would stand out this league. Well, first, I'll talk a little bit about the interaction of how it works and why it works. You need this node on a bow, and it shows up as early as item level 4, and there are like multiple, like you can get it on one-handers where it's like 200% of the health, and then I think the lower tier is 300 or 400 on a bow. The highest tier is explodes for 600% of life, and yeah, it is really doing some good damage. But how are we making these totems explode? So we're actually using Trup support with Rejuvenation Totem, and you can use Devouring Totem. It is slightly more damage as well, but I really like the fact that you get so much regen from Rejuve Totem, and it's not much less damage. Using Trap support, and then we're using the Rejuve Totem, and we're using Cluster Traps, Multi-Throw. We're throwing a lot of traps, but our totem limit is 1. So there will always be 1 totem up, but everything else that is thrown is instantly being killed and does like a tiny explosion of AoE, and that's how we get the damage. So it basically plays like a trap build. I'm just running around right-clicking and throwing down loads of traps. And if I'm throwing down 25 traps, 24 will explode, and these have crazy base damage. So much that I didn't take any damage nodes pretty much. I took like the stuff I needed for poison, because that's a really good way to utilize this, right? It's physical damage, and poison stacks infinitely. So very, very strong. Now, this is not going to be a super in-depth build guide, but I had Xai work on it while I was sleeping, just so that I could bring something to you guys and talk about this. For a leveling version of the build, I am actually going to be uploading a basically play with me. It's not very detailed. There's not like, I try to explain things as we're learning, but yeah, it's a learning process. And I actually leveled with this from level 20. You can actually level with it from level 4, but I think the first step is getting Herald of Ash early is really okay. Then as soon as you get the Pathfinder Ascendancy of Proliferation with Poison, you can ditch Herald of Ash, because that would lower your damage, right? It's conversion. You deal less physical damage. The weapon that I used in the video, it's level 20 and it has the mod, but it has conversion as well. So I have 25% less damage than I should, and it's still this good. So I leveled with that all the way until level 48, and then I was able to switch into my endgame bow. It's what I'm going to be using for a while until I'm able to get a perfect one. And as you can see, it is just shredding everything. It's really fast to play. I thought it would be awful. It's no impending doom, but it is very, very fast. So let's talk about it. So if we go in POB here, we have like the bare minimum, and then we have an endgame tree. So bare minimum is basically like kind of what you would need for a mapping version of the build, and you can follow the skill tree again, like I said, of the play with me. It's surprisingly short for a play with me. They're usually 5 to 7 hours, but I think this is just 4 hours, and I actually got to maps. Usually I cut out the Blood Aqueduct part. This is kind of boring, but it was so fast that we just kept it. So I'll explain a little bit. So for leveling, obviously I went straight up here and I rushed the poison nodes since I wanted to do this early, and after that, I went straight up because I wanted to do EB. There is another thing, and I would personally recommend this, is very rough on mana later. And the biggest thing you want is a Slave Driver's Hand. So they drop from the trap room in Incursion, and then you need to kill the boss until a vial drops. I can't remember what the vial drops, but Scry will link it there. Look at it. That's the vial you need to upgrade, and then you get a Sacrifice Unique Chamber to level 3, and then instead of just having the slot to put in the unique, it will also have a vial, and you do the low level of the Slave Driver's Hand, put that in with the vial, and it upgrades. And this is so good because Skill Switch Throw Traps cost life instead of mana, so you're basically getting life tap for free. And it is sadly 25% reduced trap throwing speed, but it's increased AoE, which hopefully works. It's a little unsure, but global AoE seems to work. Increases and reductions to cast speed also apply to trap throwing speed. So this means that your onslaught will now give you 20 trap throwing speed. And if you're able to get cast speed on gear, this will now be huge, which normally would be a dead stat. And you're also having a chance to get endurance, frenzy, and power charges. We do obviously use charged traps, but this doesn't give endurance. So very, very nice to get those as well. And here you can see the setup. This is damage setup with an empower. And I'll talk a little bit about this. So we have a rejuve totem. Like I said, you can use devouring totem because the quality on devouring totem is percentage life. This is especially good if you're using an ashes of the stars, and it will be more damage. This build doesn't have damage issues. I would rather get the 500 life regen that's always up. Like that is very substantial for me on a build that already has such an insane amount of damage. I don't think POB can actually calculate the damage, but we will definitely hit dock cap. I'm sure we can add some random simulations for simulating the damage at some point. Empower is really good because a endgame weapon you can craft looks like this. And I'll go endgame in a second, show you what my bow looks like right now. But this is like best in slot. It's +1 gems, +2 socket and support gems, giving our Empower level 6. Chaos damage over time multiplier, chaos damage over time, and poisons you inflict deal damage faster. For comparison, this is my bow right now. Yeah, that's right. I'm using this just for lightning resist and cold resist. That's it. I don't really need anything more right now. And then I have the that, and sadly I have this at 50%. You can be 75% chance to summon 2 totems. That'll make a big difference because this mastery here, skills that summon a totem have a 30% chance. If you have 75 plus 30, it'll always summon 2 totems. So they stack additively. And that makes using Empower a lot better. So I technically right now just have a 50% chance, but like I said, the damage is so ridiculous, it doesn't really matter. Other than that, gear we're suggesting is a Vile Arrow Quiver. You use this specifically for chance to poison, and then you can get resist on it as well. Do remember things like damage over time multiplier with attacks will not matter. Helmet, we're doing as much fizz damage taken as cold, fire, etc. as you can. Temp chains, curse effect, very, very good. And then suppression, but you know, you can just go for resist as well. You do get suppress cap basically from your gear and skill tree. We're using a lightning coil, and you could also, if you do have a 6-link bow, you don't necessarily need a 6-link lightning coil. So you could go for things like max res, percentage damage, percentage life, and farming these. If you're farming cemetery, you'll end up getting a lot of lightning coils from the cards. Amulet +1 all skills is really good. There's no like +1 anything else we can use. So we can get +1 all and then just a bunch of resists. Here you could also get chaos damage over time multiplier or chaos damage. Those would both work. Rings, just cast speed for your slave driver's hands and life and resist. And belt, you want flash charges gained, flash charges reduced is nice, duration, anything with flash is really good. You could also use a essence of delirium or horror, whatever is the one that gives alchemist genius. But you can also get that from a cluster. Taste of Hate is really good for this build. It's got physical damage taken as cold, and you want to get close to 100% of physical damage taken as elemental. And then you can completely ignore things like armor and focus on just having high res, max res, etc. And it also has physical damage as extra cold damage. Now, this is not conversion, so it won't lower our damage. It'll just be an extra thing. A lot of people have been wondering, is this build bugged? Is this intended? Well, obviously, like they were intending that we were going to play around with stuff like this, or they wouldn't have added the mod. However, one thing that is a little strange, and it might just be because of the explosion, counts like you doing it directly, but you were able to leech with this build, and the poison counts as you yourself doing it. So if anything was going to get fixed, it would be those 2 things, and that doesn't matter. The only thing that that changes is you wouldn't be able to use Plague Bearer, and you can't leech with it. But the actual interaction and the crazy damage of the build, that seems very much intended and not something that we're worried about gets a mid-league nerf. Now we're going to see a clip of Xai, and he has the 400% more damage mod on the bow. He didn't find a 600 for a while. This is Uber Maven on softcore. Take a look at his damage. So this is super cheap budget. It really feels like one of those clickbait videos where it's like, hey, 10C budget killing all Ubers. So you can see the crazy damage here on 400%. So obviously a 600% more multiplier. Maven would have been just gone instantly here. And yeah. It's pretty crazy. This is literally Uber Maven. She's just instantly gone. So, you know, I just wanted to show that. This is one of the craziest builds I've seen. And like I said, I thought Artillery Ballista was going to be it. But yeah. We're using Purity of Elements. That gets us Ailment Immune. Grace. You can use Malevolence for more damage. But you should be hitting dot cap, which is 36 million damage, pretty fast on this. If you don't have an Empower and you don't have the multi-totem stat on your bow, use multiple totems. It is literally doubling your damage over not having it. Obviously, having it from the skill tree on the bow is a lot better, and then an Empower will be huge because this will be a level 6 Empower or 7 Empower. So yeah, it is pretty crazy. So we're getting a level 29 Rejuve Totem. And there's no Awaken gems that this build uses other than Awaken Empower. So there's not much you can farm up. So you can farm up for your other builds, which is kind of nice. You could also use Diverge and Herald of Agni. This is important to mention. It's an additional 20% chance to poison. I currently have 85% chance to poison. That's more than enough. I'm using an Ice Fang Orbit, and I can quickly go over the starter gear that I have so you can see how viable this is on low gear. And I'm like shredding at the moment. So I'm actually not even suppress capped. That's the main thing I want to fix for hardcore, but I'm using a coil. I haven't even set up my gems with like defensive setups like House of Damage Taken yet. And you can see like all my gear is like literally random shit. I actually do need to get a new helmet because I'd rather have some suppression on it. I don't even have the chance to poison quiver yet. And I'm using an Ice Fang Orbit, which is dead implicit because I'm not even using Malevolence yet. Just like life and resist everywhere. That's all we've got. For damage, I haven't even taken Ironwood, which is obviously a huge amount of damage, and I can get the mastery there. Just if you're wondering why I haven't taken it, I have so much damage right now that I'm just sitting here thinking, is there any more survival I can grab out without crazy pathing? Because that is all I care about right now. I just want to get as tanky as possible. I'll also be looking into a Juggernaut in the future because using the 4th Vow and Divine Flesh, see if I can show you. I think that could be like a borderline immortal character, at least against like, you know, non-delve content. And degens. Degens will probably kill the character, right? But I'd want to make a really, really tanky character and then use Herald of Ash for clearing. The clear would be very rough. I assume it would be something similar to an old Herald of Agony character back in the day where the clear is like not the main part of the build, but it just shreds bosses for like 30, 35 million DPS. With a crazy tank where you can tank like every Uber's a tank except degens. So that is the current goals, the stuff we're working on. We are still working on the artillery ballista too. I just had to try this build out. I'm also going to be making an impending Doom character pretty soon because I found a Vixens and I want a character to just really like mow down Legion. And none of my characters really do that at the moment. So yeah, that's the current stuff we're working on. And if you want to follow my progress, it's on Zizaran Giga OP, and Xai is playing it as well, and Steel Mage. And I think, honestly, a lot of people are going to be playing this. So we'll be experimenting with other stuff, but we just wanted to get this out and like explain everything so you get a rough idea of what we're doing. We have some notes here as well. Obviously, this is not as in-depth as our other guides, but yeah, like it's a learning process. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Sub if you like it, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.